Greetings. Are you ready to discuss our minor relatives? Here's the opening of a great hymn. One cannot help but be amazed at the impact it gives when the top of the tonic arpeggio is reached, but the harmony has gone to minor rather than major. The chord used here is the sixth chord. Technically, it's called the submediant. It's a minor chord related to the tonic chord in that they have two tones in common. Because of this, the sixth chord can substitute. That is, it can be a stand-in for the tonic in several ways. But before we get too involved with that, let's get the feel of it in our fingers. The melody here is 1, 1, 3, 3, 5, 5. So why not just use the tonic chord for both measures? Let's try it. But that's not very exciting. Or maybe we could use the tonic chord for the first measure. A little bit better, but let's hear it again the way it was written to hear the subtle change of flavor that the sixth chord brings. Here's the beginning of a song by Ralph Carmichael. Be sure to play the left hand in octaves so you can hear the sixth scale step clearly. The sixth chord here has a little more impact because the melody is static. But it does illustrate how easy it is to move from the tonic chord to the sixth chord. Get it under your fingers. Now let's take a common patriotic song. There are several tonic chords here. Now let's follow the tonic by a sixth chord in a couple places. That's interesting, but here is the original. Using the one chord twice in the first measure gives us a solid feeling of the key. The use of the sixth for the next part gives just a touch of variety. It's subtle, and some listeners probably will not hear the difference. Let's hear it again. Now listen again to just the ending, because here's another use of this sixth chord. Why didn't it use the tonic like this? What's wrong here? Well, the melody has reached the tonic too soon. By using the sixth chord, it allows the melody to be on the keynote yet we know the phrase is not yet finished. This is one of the very common uses of the sixth chord. It's called a deceptive cadence. Anytime you play the 5/7 chord, it wants to resolve to the tonic. When it bypasses that and goes to the 6, it's like playing a trick on us, so it's called deceptive. So now we've discovered a really fun thing to do with the 6th chord. When we reach the end of a song, but we're going to let the subject of creating novel endings be another teaching session. Here is a well-known gospel song. What do you think is happening in the second phrase? What's happening here we will call switching the mode of the song, going from major to minor. We started off in major, then switched to the relative minor. Of course, you probably know that C major and A minor share the same key signature, that is, no sharps or flats. We need to take a short look at the chord which helped transition us to the minor. First, note that the melody note for the end of the first phrase on the word sin is step number 3 of the key of C. This becomes step 5 of A minor. So the transition chord must be an E chord. The full chord is E, G sharp, B, D. The G sharp leads us into the key of A. A hint in practicing this, if you want to understand it well enough to transpose it, play the 3 chords several times. Note that the bass line simply moves down the scale. Your pivot note of E stays in place for all 3 chords. Now just add the note that has to be raised or sharped that will point to your destination, G sharp to A. If you have the melody and bass notes in place, the rest should come easily. Here's an old hymn that moves to the relative minor. Again, the 5/7 belonging to the 6th chord is used to lead us into the minor phrase. This one also illustrates the way composers sometimes use the minor to convey a darker mood. The text in this hymn for the 2nd verse is given here, the very dying form. Here the entire phrase stays in the minor key. But a most interesting thing happens at the cadence. The chord to close the cadence is the dominant of 6, the 5 of the minor area. It's called a half cadence when a phrase ends on a 5 chord. This is done in part because it creates a very interesting contrast with the chord that starts the next phrase. There's no connection between this chord and the one starting the next phrase, other than that they have one note in common. Instead, it produces a somewhat surprising effect. You really want the name for this relation? I was afraid you would ask that. It's a chromatic mediant relationship. Can't we just say that the F major chord followed by the D flat major chord is colorful? Here is another Christmas song that begins the third line of the music with a shift to the relative minor. Notice again that it pivots on the third step of the major key. I say pivots because it's only a D, not chords, so it's free to go in a different direction. Let's hear one more example of the relative minor phrase. The switch point here is the high D, the third step of B flat major, but the fifth step of G minor, our goal. On the word story, there is a 6/4 chord and a 5 of G. So we have a full cadence in G, where it stays for one measure. Also at play here is that this 6 chord functions as a setup area for another 6/4 and 5/7, this time for the key of F. Christmas songs seem to delight in the major-minor game. In While by My Sheep, this is made the chief element of the style of the work. This demonstrates how easily you can move to the relative minor and back again. All we need is just the 5 of the mode to which we want to go. In measure 13 and 14, minor to major just takes one chord. And in the last phrase, we start in major, then end the piece in minor. Here's another example of the 6 chord being used as a substitute for the 1 chord. The 1 chord is a very strong chord. You would expect it to be used at the start of a piece, just to establish where the tonic is. Don't we always start out from home? But to continue using it is like packing up for a trip and never leaving. The melody with the dotted 8th and 16th notes really pound the tonic. Then goes up the arpeggio to the tonic again. To harmonize it with a 1 chord again, well, let's see what that would sound like. we need to feel that the melody wants to continue, not stop. And we need a little relief from the strong tonic chord.